making it on our own. Balancing kids, work and home. We'll make it if we try. As long as I've got you by my side, it's tough. It can be a lot. You don't know if you're good or not. The world, it can seem so insane. It can make no sense. It can be a pain. But we're making it on our own, just you and I.
We're at Aztalan State Park in Wisconsin. So named because in the 1800s, the local amateur archaeologists depressingly, understandably, thought that this was an Aztec site due to its stepped pyramidal mounds. Racism was prevalent in the day, and it was just not believed that Native Americans, who were thought of as savages, could have possibly built such a well thought out and planned city. And it is a well thought out and planned city, and it's built by the Mississippians. This is the last of the mound building peoples, whereas the Hopewell and other woodland peoples that we've been looking at the structures of were hunter-gatherer, or a mix of hunter-gatherer and agricultural. These folks were sedentary. They had agriculture, they stayed in one place, and they built cities.
Aztalan is a city. If there's one thing I want this little self-indulgent web series to achieve, is to get just a few people to stop thinking of American history and so-called modern society, starting with the arrival of Columbus. Well, to get that, and to also get my deserved share of that large pool of sex-addicted bikini babes looking to give head to a horse-faced social reject with a YouTube channel and obsession for piles of dirt. There were many cities, many cities on North American soil long before we people who call ourselves Americans arrived. Aztalan here was a walled and permanent settlement. They grew corn, beans, and squash. They relied heavily on the river for fishing, and they hunted deer, just like you camouflage-wearing towheads with your tactical gear do today. Within the walls of the city, they lived in houses, just like you or I. They lived in houses, not teepees, houses, you fucking idiots who instantly think of teepees when you think of the Native American. The teepee, which is in fact a tent that was used pretty much only by the nomadic Native Americans of the Great Plains and not by the other 90% of the people dwelling upon this continent. Dear fair viewer, who is most likely either adhering to one of two mindsets when it comes to concepts of the ancient American, categorizing them as either as nomadic plains-dwelling person who lived in a teepee and sent up smoke signals, meaning you're age 45 or older, or as a person who lived in the desert and built dream catchers and did peyote to talk to lizard men, which means you're under 40 or a saggy-breasted lesbian in their 60s. The walled city of Aztalan contained mounds of varying importance and usage. Some were burial mounds containing 10 to 20 important individuals. The platform mounds were flat-topped and had wooden structures built on top of them. Probably temples or places of residence of priests or chieftains. Aztalan also contains a row of mysterious mounds which began as a row of single posts of wood which were erected, then burned, and then buried under a mound. Perhaps they were some kind of monument to a harvest year or a chief, perhaps carved like stele or a totem pole. Who knows? We killed their ancestors and their stories died with them. And Aztalan also contains the Princess Mound, a mound containing a single burial of a young woman and over 20,000 jewelry beads. This was a city, and though its story is lost to the sands of time, it is still more intriguing and mysterious than other nearby Wisconsin communities like Milwaukee or Madison. Pabst and pseudo-intellectualism mixed with contemporary arrogance and shit cheese, that's all we get from those two worthless burgs.
It's really an amazing site, rich in history, because people occupied this area for nearly 10,000 years. And it's just really amazing what we see in the archaeological record, because it shows that when the Mississippians arrived and started with their urban planning and building a city, they still coexisted with the earlier woodland people who were building the conical mounds. Archaeological record shows that they both occupied this site at the same time, very similar to how we have like Amish living side by side with more modern peoples, or similar to the contrast between, chic urban city centers and rural areas. Eventually, though, the Mississippians won out, and their way of life was adopted by all the peoples who lived here. Just imagine that. There were cities on this continent before we arrived. This is a giant settlement that claimed allegiance to the massive city south of here, of Cahokia. Many residents who lived here actually were from there. We can tell from the archaeological evidence. And they regularly traded with the site. And it's remarkably well preserved, containing a lot of really interesting elements that show us what life was like during this time period. There are all sorts of interesting features that are still preserved on this site. In the river whose banks upon which the city was built are still the remnants of dams, small stone structures that would funnel fish in certain directions and trap them and make them easier to fish. The floor plans of their houses, their circular and rectangular homes still survive. All sorts of interesting features that are endemic to a sedentary culture, a city building culture, the most noticeable of which is the giant walls that ran around the city. These are a recreation, but they're based on the post holes that were excavated during archaeological investigations. Giant wall surrounded the whole city. It wasn't just wood, it was covered in clay and grass and hide, so it was really a strong, thick wall. Contained regular watchtowers, other defensive features, and secret entrances through which the residents could come and go. And those are the trappings of sedentary lifestyle. Whereas before, the woodland peoples were nomadic hunter-gatherers, competing with the land and with nature for survival and banding together in cooperation. When you have a sedentary lifestyle, people in one place, people fostering a surplus of resources, means they need to protect those resources. So they build walls around their city to protect themselves from other competing towns. So that means you have warfare, and we certainly had it here. There are numerous burn pits full of human remains, which suggest conflict, most likely ritual sacrifice of captured warriors from rival tribes. And really, we just see all this trappings of modern society starting to form here. A ruling class living atop the giant platform mound, a warrior class defending the city, and then makers of pottery, makers of homes, preparers of food, so on and so forth. Yeah, and with a sedentary lifestyle, you eventually go batshit crazy. You have deification of leaders, ritual sacrifice, cannibalism, and all sorts of other stuff. And this is pretty much the end of the line for the mound building cultures of this area. It lasted for nearly 3,000 years. Starting out as hunter-gatherers, building conical mounds, then effigy mounds, and then founding cities, stunning cities, with platform mounds, walls, burial mounds, and more. And then, inexplicably, long before our arrival, they disappeared. It's hard to know why. One can conjecture. The collapse of a civilization is usually predicated by a mix of climate change, dwindling resource, and political strife in the ruling class. And there is evidence of all those things here. And man, climate change, dwindling resources, political strife, sure does sound familiar, doesn't it? I wonder how long it is before the Trumpian MAGA cults start resorting to ritual sacrifice and cannibalism.